Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stephen Mercer, and I'm back today to have a conversation with someone who knows a lot about what's going on college campuses right now. And I'm really grateful to have Dr. Matthew Ward, who's the Vice President of Enrollment Management at California Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, California, who knows a lot about college admission, has been at this a long time, and thinks about this a lot and thinks about how colleges are going to treat this pandemic, but also thinking about students and families. So, Matthew, thank you for being here today. I'm really grateful.
Happy to be here, Stephen. Thank you.
So, could you briefly just describe the California Lutheran campus? Just give us a sense of, where is it and what's it like and how large and the type of institution it is. And then also briefly, these may be some obvious things. Just tell us, how is campus responding to this pandemic generally?
Sure. So we're located in Thousand Oaks, California, as you mentioned. We're about halfway between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, 12 miles inland as the crow flies from Malibu. And we have about 4,300 students, 3,000 of whom are undergraduates. We have a traditional undergraduate liberal arts program, as well as a few graduate programs located in the School of Management, Graduate School of Psychology, Graduate School of Education. And we also have a seminary up in Berkeley, California. In terms of response to the crisis, this could be a long-winded response. It's certainly disrupting all of higher ed. And that's one thing that is notable, because Cal Lutheran has been impacted by a number of things over the last couple of years, including some fires proximal to campus. So our leadership team has been we feel like we've been in constant emergency mode for the last 2 years. And we are meeting regularly. And I'd say the one thing to characterize the climate on campus is one of uncertainty. And I think the uncertainty and kind of the ambiguity of where we're headed as it relates to fall is disconcerting to so many people. So from the college side, certainly, as we model different kinds of scenarios, both financially and culturally and socially, that's one consideration. But in terms of your audience and families thinking about what decisions they're going to make, we're trying to get some insights into that as well. And so many people want a definitive answer about what fall is going to look like. And I would say that with the schools who have made statements about what fall is going to look like, they're all still, they all lack definition in terms of unless they're saying that they're going to be virtual. Right. I think that there's really been no definitive answer yet.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to see, as I watch the news and as I keep my eye on my various news feeds of professionals and other college admission folks, to see how few campuses are coming out with anything that sounds definitive. But also, it's surprising me that schools are coming out to say almost anything at this. I know that you can't be silent, but to somehow suggest that you would know what's going to happen several months from now, given the volatility of this kind of disaster that we're facing, seems challenging. But maybe from a leadership perspective, it makes sense.
Well, part of it's trying to understand the psychology of decision making, and we're in unprecedented times right now. So what I have, where we landed this last weekend, actually, we had a message go out from our president, was one of aspiration and inclination to try to do the best we can to return to some sort of live format in the fall. We had so much pressure coming from admission vis-a-vis parents and families asking, what is this going to look like? I'm basing my decision on whether you're going to have intercollegiate athletics and extracurricular opportunities and all the things that we value.
Right.
Your education environment. So we, like a lot of institutions, felt like it was important for people to hear from us to say, we're doing planning and we're planning for many different kinds of scenarios, because it is our intention to be live in some way in the fall, keeping in mind that county health officials may say you can't do that.
So let's think a little bit about this incoming class, right? As an enrollment manager, you've got some real clear goals and in some ways pressure, right, to enroll a certain number of students coming up, and also the long-term kind of reputation of your school. And there's lots of moving parts to this. So right now, families and students are admitted and are making their decisions about where they're going. How's that going for you at your institution? But broadly, what do you know about how other enrollment managers are thinking about this, the challenges, the good and the bad?
Sure. So all the models have been totally dismantled, right? So we do a lot of data crunching to figure out how many students we should admit, how much financial aid we should offer to meet certain kinds of enrollment objectives. And most institutions have objectives around a certain kind of head count, quality concerns in terms of the academic performance of students coming in, trying to create diversity in the student body in various forms, socioeconomic, geographic, et cetera. And all the modeling around how different students will respond to our admission offers, our financial aid offers, are totally being turned upside down. And so we have to do a lot in real-time assessment and analytics around how students are engaged. And what I've noticed is with our early applicants, our early application pool, they have stayed really engaged with us. Now, we moved our deposit deadline to June 1st.
Right.
So a lot of the institutions with whom I interact kept their May 1 deadline. So I actually have some intelligence around how things have worked for other selective private institutions in Southern California. And there's certainly been a softening in the number of students willing to commit or submit an enrollment deposit. We've seen lots of data around students who have submitted an enrollment deposit or committed to an institution, but have declared that they are going to wait and see or withdraw. We're unfortunately seeing lots of students that are depositing at multiple institutions, which is something that makes it really challenging to engage your incoming class.
Right.
As we head to June 1st, one of the things that we're really focused on is the fact that many students in our backyard or locally are probably going to be more inclined to stay closer to home. So
Right.
we're actually using that as a marketing opportunity and an outreach opportunity to really engage those audiences in the Ventura County and LA County regions where they may have chosen at one point to go away to school, but now those decision making has changed.
Yeah.
So the one thing I'll say about this class, they've been engaged with the institution for a long time. We had lots of students being recruited by faculty and coaches, and this disruption, certainly is changing their decision-making process. But I think it's also important for us to focus in on those students who would enter in 2021,
Right.
because their typical spring break visits to schools, their anticipated activities and open houses that they might go to or interviews that they might do in the fall, those are likely disrupted. And they don't have the same kind of relationship that this entering class of 2020 does.
Right. And that's what I'm hearing a lot of. A lot of concern with the students and families that I'm working with who are high school juniors or younger, right? The disruption to testing and visiting, and they don't know what to do, and they appreciate the outreach, but they're still not certain. But before I want to talk about those lower classes, but I want to talk a little bit more about this incoming class right now. Are you noticing students already going ahead and requesting gap years, or is it just a kind of a mixed in with what you are seeing with maybe multiple deposits or just hesitating?
It's mixed in for sure. The two big requests, or what we're seeing getting the most traction, not only at Cal Lutheran, but in my interactions with other enrollment professionals at other institutions, gap year, and will you change your price or offer more financial aid if you are virtual?
Yeah.
Right. I didn't pay to go to a small liberal arts college that's virtual.
Right.
And I'm either going to, so that question is out there. And I think it's also tied to, I will make another choice. I will go to a community college, or I will take a gap year. Their institutions have offered different kinds of policies around when they need to declare if they're going to do a gap year. And for us, we're still tracking towards June 1 and have a lot of decisions to make regarding those commitments students make at that deadline, and how we would do deferment if they want to defer an enrollment for a year.
Okay, so that hasn't hit yet because you're waiting for that June 1 deadline to come to see where you're at. So also on the incoming class, I mean, one of the biggest concerns I hear is money, right? Costs. Families who applied for financial aid successfully before, but things have changed, or families that did not apply, and also they believe things have changed. So, generally, how are you treating that? But what's your advice generally for families that are worried, and which is practically everybody, right?
Right. Institutions like mine, I'll just give some insights into the financial model around housing, and you can read different articles that have come out about institutions, the impact of moving students off campus just in this short time on institutional finances, which was significant. To move our 1,450 students off campus in March was a little bit over $4 million in lost revenue to the institution because we refunded that money to students. If we have to socially distance in a way in the fall that requires us to give every student their own room or every student their own bathroom. I mean, if we gave every student their own bathroom, we would have about 330 students on our campus. And that would be over $10 million in revenue lost to the institution. So these are important considerations as we think about what it means to enroll students and to kind of protect our to play defense a bit. So to get back to the point, playing defense also kind of creates a buyer's market. And I'll be frank about that I think families that are looking at merit money that was offered by an institution might be able to go back and ask for more.
Right.
And certainly there are, when you look at the unemployment numbers and the disruption to people's work environments, there are certainly cases out there where families are going to be able to appeal for more aid, and institutions are changing policies to accommodate those kinds of changes in income.
Yeah.
For us, for instance, we have a policy to have a family demonstrate loss of income over the course of 3 months before we would consider it as in an appeal. We're going to sideline that policy for a short time while families are facing immediate disruption, so we can effectively offer aid if families need it.
Okay. Because with a lot of the families that I've worked with over the many years, the notion of negotiating aid, as the seniors get to this stage, right, when they're making their decisions, has always been on the table, but it's always been families I think have been a little hesitant because they don't always see applying to college as the same thing as, purchasing a car or, other situations where you might traditionally negotiate a price. And I'm hearing more and more families come and ask me, can we call the college? Can we negotiate? You're saying, yeah. I mean, you always can, but I think your insight is a smart one, right? That no guarantees, but
yeah, I've been in this business for a long time, and things have changed. And yeah, there's certainly a hierarchy of schools based on reputation and prestige and a certain demand curve that runs through this, where certain institutions are going to be more likely to offer more institutional aid than others. Right. Cal Lutheran is what I would offer as kind of a middle market institution. We are selective in our admission and financial aid policies, but at the same time, when we face this kind of crisis situation, I think that we want to make sure we're protecting enrollment, and certainly seeing that there is a softening. I know that lots of institutions have gone to the wait list. I've learned of several institutions that have had a significant increase in their admit rate, and even as you look at the most elite institutions in this country, they've all reported that they have admitted more students, and that's a signal to the marketplace. And while we don't like to use terms like marketplace when we talk about higher ed, and you pointed to kind of like the car dealership model, but there is a supply and demand element to this, and for families that are thinking, well, I don't necessarily want to make that kind of investment, considering all the uncertainty. I think that they have more opportunity in this environment than they typically would.
Okay. So let's briefly go back to this, the classes below the seniors. You mentioned this next wave of applicants who don't have the same relationship, I think you said, engagement with your institution and probably other institutions. As an enrollment manager, how worried are you about that? Is that something that you think can be overcome in a modest amount of time? Again, we're at a pendulum swing right now where we're in stay-at-home orders and things are just loosening up. It's still more or less shut down. And this is a short-term problem, and though that it will get back to kind of building those relationships with the incoming class pretty quickly? Or do you see this as a longer-term issue, either not necessarily that we're going to stay in the situation that we're in, but that this disruption has been so shocking to this system that you have larger concerns?
Sure. There's a couple of angles on this one. For us being in the state of California, we have the largest, most prestigious public higher ed system in the world with UC, and certainly CSU. The largesse of those systems and what they do plays a big role with what kinds of decisions students make. And so if, for instance, CSU makes the decision to go virtual over a long period of time, that actually could be an advantage for an institution like mine in talking to students who are seeking a more personalized experience, or perhaps an institution that's able to be live earlier than larger public institutions. I think in terms of the traditional process of developing a relationship with the institution, which is embedded in a network of people, right? So I think about a conversation I had the other day with our volleyball coach, who had to cancel a number of recruitment visits where, she would go to a tournament in Colorado and get to know student athletes. And those student athletes are 15, 16 years old. And so they start developing that network. They develop a connection to the admission office as they go out and travel and interview students and engage them. So I think to a certain extent, the juniors and sophomores are kind of the sleeping problem right now that for enrollment managers, that we need to make sure that we're able to kind of keep that relationship alive and moving towards fall 2021, because that could actually be a bigger problem than this year. If, for instance, we have to be forced into a virtual mode, let's say in the middle of the year, and the application process is disrupted, that's going to create kind of a scrambling kind of environment for admission offices and financial aid offices.
So from your perspective, it's a matter of just looking forward and just thinking about that and trying to do what you can to look for the opportunities to stay in touch and build those networks and relationships.
To consider all the different creative avenues that we can come up with to stay in touch with students. I think there's a lot of people who are of the mind that college, that this is going to reshape college in many different ways, and that we are going to be so much more equipped to engage people digitally. I mean, when we think about big football, big time football, which is as you know, a factor when students are considering colleges. Well, we might not have stadiums full of people for a year, 2 years?
Mhm.
What does that do in terms of how institutions reshape what they offer and their value proposition? I don't think schools like mine and liberal arts colleges that have a tradition of small classes and connectivity that is based on human interaction in a space are going to all of a sudden be online institutions. But we're certainly learning some lessons, and we also are dealing with a generation of students who are digital natives, and they are more equipped than our faculty are in navigating this environment. And perhaps it is accelerating our advances pedagogically and the ways that we engage students. So I'll go back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. The uncertainty is what is creating the most anxiety on both sides of the equation. Those that are looking at colleges and considering colleges, and what the colleges do to respond to the changing decision-making models that families have relied upon for decades.
So, Dr. Matthew Ward from Cal Lutheran University, thanks so much for joining us. This has been fascinating. It's really great to hear your perspective, and I'm grateful for your time.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Dr. Mercer, and I wish you well in your professional endeavors and certainly with all the families you work with.
Thanks.